In this set of videos, we have two lecture videos. First, talking about ethics and decision making, and then second, talking about making these decisions in a volatile, uncertain, ambiguous environment. And then there's some additional videos that are in the YouTube playlist, really looking at the different applications that we can have for these concepts, whether it's in an AI environment or in the real world today. This video is looking at the role of ethics in decision making. And so the objectives for this video are really to be able to understand how we can apply ethics to our decision-making processes, and also to be able to define two general approaches to ethics. And in doing so, we will become familiar also with two very classic ethical dilemma situations. One is with the trolley, and the other is the footbridge dilemma. And so first, when we're talking about behavioral ethics and decision making, we need to understand exactly what we're talking about with behavioral ethics. And so that is really individual behavior that is judged according to socially accepted moral norms. So this is, again, applying moral norms to the behavior of other people. And there's three theories in general that people use when making their decisions and judging the behavior associated with those decisions. So first is theories about the world, theories about other people, and theories about themselves. And so if we take all of this together, we generate these ideas over time, kind of naturally as we go through life. And so we start to try to understand, okay, this is how the world works, this is how other people work, this is how I work. And so this is also in your assigned reading to get more detail. And so in doing that, that means that when we approach a situation, we have a general understanding or theory about how we might handle it based on our own morals or our own ethical code. And so, for example, in the next slide, I'm going to talk about a very classic ethical dilemma and think about how you might handle it. On this slide is an image of the trolley dilemma situation. And so it's a dilemma because you have an option actually in the situation to change the outcome. But of course, no matter the option, somebody was going to get hurt. So for example, that's you standing there at the lever and the trolley is coming down the tracks. Right now, if it stays and you do nothing, it continues down the tracks and will hit actually the 5 people standing there to the left. However, you're standing there right next to the lever, and if you throw the lever, actually it will change directions and go down the track where there's just one other person. How do you make this decision? So there's two approaches here when we're trying to understand this trolley dilemma situation. So first is an ethical perspective called utilitarianism. And so they're saying that the consequences are really all that matters. And so that would guide our behavior. So if we say that the consequences are all that really matters, that means that I think about, okay, well, what's the greatest good for the greatest number of people? What does that mean? That means hit the switch, change tracks. You only hurt one person or kill one person versus 5. Pretty clear. However, there's another approach. It's the deontological approach. And this judges morality based on whether somebody adheres to different rules or duties or expectations. So it's looking at the motives, not just the consequences of the action, or looking at the behavior even itself. So you took action in this situation. So in this case, it would be do not hit the switch based on the deontological approach. So generally speaking, when I give this exercise live, most people want to hit the switch and actually take action. So again, utilitarianism, the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Here's a variation on that dilemma. So there's the footbridge dilemma. So same sort of situation, a trolley is coming down the tracks, there's 5 people, you can even see here in the image, it's a family of 5, and they're standing on the tracks and the trolley is heading right for them. And there's you, the blue person standing on the bridge, and you're actually in a position to do something. However, it's a little bit different this time. This time, there's a very large person on the bridge, and actually if you push them off the bridge, they're large enough to stop the trolley and save the 5 people. Now, this is a little bit more uncomfortable than the trolley dilemma situation, right? So you're pushing somebody off the bridge. Now, here, if we go back to the two perspectives, we have the utilitarianism approach, right? So it says the consequences are all that matters. So it doesn't matter what you have to do to save the most amount of people, but rather the fact that you do save a larger amount of people. Or you can look at the deontological approach. And that's a lot of times what happens exactly in this scenario, that people start to get more uncomfortable and they start to question this utilitarianism perspective and really say, okay, well, I can't push somebody off the bridge. That's something that doesn't really adhere to the norms or rules of society, right? So that's something that I really have a hard time doing. And so in this scenario, a lot of times people who in the trolley bridge scenario, the trolley scenario, hit the switch. Here, it's a lot harder to take action. So that also shows how important context is in terms of guiding our behavior based on our ethical or moral approach. An extension of that is actually trying to imagine teaching ethics. So we just had those two scenarios, right? Imagine teaching ethics then to a computer. And so MIT actually has this program, and so the link is in the video description below. And they're trying to teach ethics actually to AI. And so what they do, as you can see here on the slide, is they present participants with two different scenarios. And they keep asking them over and over again, very different variations. What should the car do in this scenario? So it looks very familiar to the trolley scenario or the footbridge. You're in a car driving towards a barrier. There's nothing you can do. You can't change direction. You can't do anything differently with the car. You only have these two options. So one is that you keep driving, and in order to save yourself, you veer to the left at the last minute and hit the pedestrian that's crossing the street. On the other scenario, you see the little skull next to you. You keep driving and you run into the barrier and you don't survive the situation. Now, the variations in the computer, in this simulation, they get more and more interesting. So sometimes it's robbers of a bank that are crossing the street, or families, or grandmothers. And so what they're trying to do is do this same exact exercise over and over and over again to teach AI actually ethics. It also, you can imagine that this is complicated enough for humans to understand, and we can see how important the context is. But go ahead and try yourself, and it gives you actually a report at the end telling you what your kind of ethical preferences are.